Good evening, viewers, and welcome to the very first edition of Making the Case. My name is Susan Rodriguez, and I will be your host this and every Tuesday night from 9:30 to 10:30 right here on MTV. This is the very first time I will be hosting a television program. So I am very delighted to be here with you this evening, and I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all of the viewers and to thank you for inviting me into your homes and spending this hour with me. I would also like to welcome all of our viewers who are joining us on Facebook Live and all of the listeners who are joining us on Freedom Radio. The format of this program will be to spend a few minutes discussing current affairs, and then we will go into our topic for this evening, which is governance. How does a government care for its people? My guest tonight is Ms. Priya Manik Chan, Member of Parliament, former Minister of Human Services and Social Security, and former Minister of Education. Welcome, Ms. Manik Chan, and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you very much, Suzanne. Please call me Priya. You make me feel old. Good night to all our viewers, and I'd like to say that I'm extremely honored to be on Suzanne's debut program. Suzanne is one of the bright young women that Guyana has, and that exhibits the kind of potential that makes me excited for this country. So I'm very, very honored to be here tonight.
Thank you. So before we go into our topic for this evening, there were some developments today, and I would like us to spend a few minutes discussing that. So there was an announcement today by the government to recall their ministers and their members of parliament who are dual citizens. Now, the General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party had made it clear since the first ruling given by the Chief Justice that no member of parliament on the PPP side will be attending parliament, any sitting of the parliament. And in fact, the next list of candidates that will be prepared for general and regional elections will be free of any dual citizen. On the other hand, the government had indicated that they were going to allow their dual citizens to continue sitting in parliament, and we all know that there was a sudden about change today, and I think it is safe to assume that that was an attempt to influence the decision of the CCJ. And so they buckled under the tremendous pressure put on them by the leader of the opposition, and also pressure from their own supporters. And we saw the backlash that they faced on social media and on other platforms. What are your thoughts on today's developments?
Today's development, Suzanne, is no different from what epitomizes this government. In my view, this government continues to perpetrate the greatest fraud on this nation. Let's just go back to December 21st and before that. Throughout the budget debates, because we had filed this no confidence motion that brought the government down on the 15th of November. Throughout the budget debates, they kept saying, you need 33, you'll never get 33. 2 years prior to that, they had filed a no confidence motion when they had 33. On the night of the no confidence motion, they kept saying, well, you need 33, we have it, you don't. Immediately after the vote was taken, they went into a room, held a press conference with a full press corps, and told the nation that this is how democracy works, don't worry, we're going to an election. The president said the same thing the next day. And then all of a sudden, the government, being the duplicitous, untrustworthy people that they are, ran to the court and started saying, well, 33 is no longer the majority, and by the way, is a dual citizen that we put there, that shouldn't have been there, who did this. His vote can't count on this one matter, it could count on every other matter. And some other very, very it must have made them very, well, one would think that a decent person or decent people would be very uncomfortable doing that. Not these. These went, they hired lawyers, they spent the nation's money to go and defend this nonsense. And then, even after successive judgments that determined for sure that dual citizens should not be there. The High Court said it, the Court of Appeal affirmed it, so all the courts said these people shouldn't be there. Ministers still happily and conceitedly and arrogantly went on TV and newspapers and to their press conferences and said, I am sitting in the parliament, you could do what you want. This is after the PPP said, you can't sit there, you're the people who are challenging this, we won't be
And
sitting
Joseph
there.
Harman declared that he was not illegal.
Yes, and this was yesterday. And
Right.
then today, this morning, there was a very hurriedly written statement that said the dual citizens had submitted their resignations to the president. And everybody was unclear. Who are the dual citizens? Were they resigning from parliament alone? Were they resigning as ministers? How come they changed? The nation is, this is not your, you have a duty to explain to the people you swore to serve why you are making decisions you're making. That is what good governance is. That is how you get to, you owe the people you serve an explanation for your actions.
And they can't be expected to be arguing at the CCJ
Right.
to invalidate Sharon Dass's vote. In the meantime, they have their dual citizens attending Parliament.
Yeah,
So-
but so outside of being duplicitous, what other people are saying is, hold on a second here, these people prepared to resign rather than give up their dual citizenship. And a lot of them are, how do we say this kindly, old. They're aged. So why are you prefer to hold on to this foreign passport, hold on to this citizenship of another country, rather than say, no, Guyana, I love you, I came to serve you, I want to do what's best for you, so I'm going to renounce my dual citizenship so that I could serve you. This set chose, I mean, it's a personal decision people have to make, but they chose en bloc to give up the service of the people of Guyana, or through the cabinet. I suspect strongly we will still be paying them. We will still be paying them. Taxpayers of this country will still be paying them through, we'll see in days to come, you'll see how that unfolds, through give them some, call them something else. And instead of giving up their citizenship, they prefer to give up the positions.
And people saw right through that today, because you saw the comments on Facebook and on other platforms. People made those same points. Citizens were pointing out that same thing, that these persons prefer to give up their seat in the National Assembly as opposed to giving up their foreign passports.
Right. I had dinner with three friends. It was four of us on Saturday night. It was one of my friend's birthday. And the view of the table was, because I hold a different view, I'll tell you what that is just now, but the view of the table was, I want you to be a Guyanese citizen, because I want to know when you make decisions here that they will affect you and they will affect your children, and not that you could make them here for 5 years and then run somewhere else where people are actually accountable making decisions. My own view is, this is my view, it is not canvas, I don't know, it hasn't been discussed at length in the party. My own view is that the law is the law now, it must be complied with, and that says that people who have sworn allegiance to another country cannot sit in the National Assembly. That must be complied with while it is the law. I do hold the view, though, that we should explore whether that is best for Guyana going forward, given the small population we have and the kinds of skills and talents that we do need in this country. So I think that's something we can explore together. But of course, the PNC, APNU, AFC, they're not even talking to us as mature political parties should, to determine a way forward.
Well, that is a very valid point, and I think several persons have made that observation before. But right now, as you said, the law is the law, and we have to respect the law. And 2 courts have already pronounced on that issue. So we want to switch gears a little bit now, and we're going to go into our topic. As mentioned before, our topic tonight is governance, and how does a government care for its people? I think a lot of the work that the PPP administration did while they were in office went unnoticed, and not enough was done to highlight these achievements. And so I want to give you the opportunity to speak about some of those things, especially in your ministries, things that you did to better the lives of all Guyanese, especially women and children, so that people know what they can expect from a PPP administration based on their track record, because whether it's in the next few months or next year, whenever an election is held, people still need to make a decision on which party they will vote for based on what we can offer. So if you could just highlight some of the
it's interesting you said we didn't PR highlight our stuff properly. It's a harsh criticism, but I think it is one that is so accurate and factual. Sometimes, not by way of excuse, by way of explanation. Two things. One, you get so caught up in actually working, you forget to make sure the work goes out there. And then secondly, and importantly, I think this relates a lot to women in office or in places. You're terrified that if you publish everything you do, you look like you're showing off.
Yeah.
And you're pushing yourself up and you want something more. So and we just simply had a poor PR kind of outfit running the government's PR. So you're right. We didn't properly say what we were doing. But I always held the view that the people who were receiving the services knew.
Right.
So you didn't know because you might not have received a service. And I understand that, and I appreciate that it's important for us to let everyone know, and that it is actually part of good governance to, through the press, be transparent about all you're doing. But you're right, we didn't do enough to let people know. But the impact of the stuff that we did, the people it reached, the services that reached people, those people knew, and for me that was important. What is good governance? You were asking me. For me, it is a set of people elected for a term, a specific term. I hope the government hears that. Elected to serve the people of their community. So whether it's the mayor elected to serve a town, or a Tushao elected to serve a village, or a government elected to serve a country for a particular period. And one of the things I think that has to happen, especially in countries like these, is you campaign on certain plans and promises. You must deliver those. You must deliver those to people. The PPP have what we call manifestos. So we lay out, manifestos are very documents that very briefly lay out your plan. You can't really say, you could say something like, we will create financing for women, single parent mothers, but it wouldn't tell you how and where and when and so on, because it's a very brief document. So the minister needs to go do that. And in many cases, I could tell you from 2006 to 2011, a little known fact is that every single manifesto promise we made, every single one without fail, and this can be verified, so it's not something where you could go, you could check. Every single promise that was made was fulfilled. Now that's good governance. Not only were they fulfilled, but in fulfilling those promises, we sought widely the views of the people of Guyana, whether they were at Madia or Charity or in Maruca or on the Berbice coast, or whether they were in the opposition. We had caucuses with the opposition talking about the then opposition. Well, here's what we want to do. How do you feel about it? What ideas do you have to make this better? Because, yeah, that's what good governance is. Now, the contrast is, as you know, their promises that they made, APNU, AFC, both of them, none are fulfilled. Almost none are fulfilled. And not only did they not fulfill their promises, they reversed all the good programs we had. What they did do is increase their own salaries, increase their own perks, started with the High Life, 27 ministers in government. Now we'll have ministers acting for other ones, so I don't know if they'll collect the salary and give the minister who can collect the salary. I don't know how they're working it out. But it's all about the ministers. We have an education minister who up to recently was on a scholarship looking after herself. She's now a national asset. We have to protect her. This country paid for her to study. We have ministers who, instead of getting the young boy from Region 9 who can't come to town or who can't go to another country to study, their children are going to countries to study on our backs. So, and while there's nothing wrong with that, if that is a national program, when you do it only for you, it's not a national program.
Now, if I could draw one of those contrasts that you're talking about, in 2007, when we're dealing with you're talking about consultation, stakeholder consultation. In 2007, when you introduced the Sexual Offences Act, you received a letter from former President Janet Jagan, and she said, she wrote a letter to you, and she said, as to the consultation paper, let me state unequivocally that in my many years in and out of Parliament, it is the best I have seen for the social sector. You are to be congratulated for this and for having a consultation process.
Right.
Now, contrast this with my own experience with what this government did when they introduced VAT on education. They held after a very long time. They held a consultation at the National Cultural Center, which was attended by educators and parents and so on, stakeholders. We spent all day there. I went there as a concerned parent, and I sat there from morning till afternoon, and I saw parents in tears. Parents took the mic and pleaded with the ministers who were there. The Prime Minister was also there. And at the end of this entire day, with parents pouring their hearts out to this government, the Prime Minister got up and read a prepared speech. So it was as though we wasted all day there, and he got up and he read a script to say that we will look at it in the future. And that was how, and everybody got up and left.
Right. Just heartless, shameless. Let me tell you, the myth that people who send their children to private school are rich and wealthy is just that. It's a myth. It's a falsehood. Most people would prefer to have more disposable income, but we know that we want the next generation to be better than we were, and we believe they can get different needs met at different private schools, and so that's why people send their children to private school. And that was a decision that had parents protesting every week in front of the ministry. Not a word from the minister. At that same time, his daughter was getting a scholarship, by the way, and studying overseas on the backs of those parents who had to pay more for their children. The government said nothing. People could cry, people could wail, they could do what they wanted. And then a year later came and reversed it. But there are many people who felt that burden significantly, especially with the downturn of the economy generally. So people are doing worse.
And also the removal of the $10,000 school grant. I mean, how heartless can you get when you start taking away benefits from children?
So it was the removal of the $10,000 school grant. It was textbooks and exercise books that were a normal thing. This is routine. Routinely, we would give X number of exercise books to every single school child. It mightn't be enough, but it was a complement to what they needed. We would routinely give textbooks. Again, it wasn't enough. We were working on making it enough. We would give school uniforms or a uniform voucher every year to every child on the coast, vouchers, or in the hinterland school uniforms. School would begin in September, and people in the hinterland wouldn't get their uniform. It would be March and April of the following year, and they didn't get their uniforms. It wasn't only taking away the 10,000 and imposing VAT, not only on education, but on 200 other items that people had to go in the market and pay for, so they had less money. It was also the incompetence in getting the actual programs rolled out, so that benefits that are in the system, that are budgeted for, that are bought, that are stuck in storerooms. You know, there's a big scandal that an audit report last, I think it came out in October, November last year, showed that there was a huge scandal in the education ministry with textbooks being bought that weren't needed, with them not being distributed. Nobody knew where they were. The money was spent. So it was corruption as well as incompetence in rolling out the programs. And it's these are our children. If we can't prepare the next generation to take this country over, we're in trouble. And we're going to need them to do well for us because we'll be old. And we won't be able to look after ourselves the way we can now. So we really have a duty to ourselves and definitely to our children and most definitely to our country to invest in the younger generation, to invest in their in the best education we can offer them.
Right. And while you were Minister of Human Services, you did a lot of work with the family court. You introduced the family court. Women benefited a lot from that. I know from the time, from when you introduced the family court, women can now apply for a divorce and get a hearing within the same month as opposed to years ago.
Right. So the family court was something we had promised, and in 2010, and I know because I was actually pregnant, we had started construction. It was one of those projects that actually finished on time. One of like the first projects that finished on time in the whole country, I'm sure, because we was so badly wanted this building done, and then it got messed up with the administration of justice that took over after that. The family court presently, what happens? We'd prefer families to stay together, and we're very clear about that. But when families are in conflict and when they have to break up, it must be done as amicably as possible, because every time a family rips itself apart and continues that, it's the children of that family that suffer. So before, your divorce would take a year and a half, 6 months to a year and a half. Now you can get a divorce within 2 months. Before, your custody matter, sometimes kids would grow out of the age of minority. So they would start it at they're 10 and they're 18 and your matter is still not heard. Now within 2-3 months you have a full hearing, a decision, everything. Division of property, where parties are deciding who should get what. Again, within a short period of time, that's happening. Suzanne, why is that important? It's important because for me, I think it's important because families should get fixed as far as we can with the court system quickly, but also because it's women and children who suffer most when those systems take long. Now, is that court functioning how it should function?
Or if the system fails them altogether.
Or if the system fails them all. Well, you know, when it takes long, justice delayed is justice totally denied. If you're going to apply for something like maintenance and you don't get anything, you don't hear anything for 3 years, then you have to manage this child alone for 3 years, and then the parties fight amongst each other, so there's no sharing and so on. It's not working the way I thought it would, and that I'd like to see it work, but it's still doing much, much, much better than when we didn't have it. But we had a lot of women-focused programs because we knew that, like the rest of the world, this is not a condition unique to Guyana. Women are in a weaker position, so they own less wealth across the world, much, much less than men. They have more things that discriminate against them. I mean, just you coming out tonight, you had to make arrangements for your children, whereas a father might love his children, but he most likely won't have to make the same kinds of arrangements you have to make or I have to make. And so it's harder generally across the world, and definitely here in Ghana for women. So we had determined that we had 29,000 women who had registered with us that were single parents. It was bad, but we did stuff. Women who wanted, not so long ago, I met this woman. I said, you know, I know your face from somewhere, but I can't remember where. And she said, you can't remember me? I said, no. She said, you gave me my first cooler. Now, it wasn't me. It was the country that gave her a cooler that she still has. She got it from the Women of Worth program. And what that program was something that allowed women to access small loans at very low interest rates without collateral. So you didn't have to put up a house or a car or something to get the loan. And that's the cooler she would sell things from. She says she's not doing it anymore because things are so bad right now. People prefer to drink their water home before they buy from her. So she still has the cooler. It's still working, but she's not selling from it right now. That program was hailed by BBC. It was up to recently a former minister in our government wrote me to say what was the program again, because she was going to speak to some other women and talk about policy and how policy can change lives, and she was using it as a model. Other countries came to us to see how we had done this and how they could do it. This government collapsed it, abolished it. So what has come out of the government for women? Nothing. There are no new laws, there are no new programs, there's really nothing. And in addition to having nothing, they went and knock off all these sugar workers. They have cost people jobs, because when companies are doing badly and they lay people off, Barama and these other companies, then jobs are being lost. So a conservative estimate is that we've lost 30,000 jobs already. That means, these numbers sound fancy, but that simply means people have no money to take home. I was speaking to somebody who literally was hanging over my back door today, and he said, wife said, I gotta find a job, because this thing about waiting for what you are skilled in, you better go find a yard worker or something, because we can't manage anymore on this joblessness that you're going through.
So, for those of you who are just joining us, our topic for this evening is governance. How does a government care for its people? We have a few more matters to discuss, and then we will go to the phone lines. I would just ask the operator to put the numbers up on the screen, so persons can stand by to give us a call and talk with us. So I will be taking my first phone call on air, so
you might be the first person.
I'm looking forward to that. Now, I want to bring your attention to something that took place last week at the Square of the Revolution. It was an event planned by the government, and I have here a flyer, their flyer. And it's the event was called Bringing Government to the People. Now, this is a flyer that they put out, the government put out, and they're telling people to come tell us about, and here we have a list of things, an incredible list. 30,000 jobs lost, broken promises, removal of pensioner subsidies, Durban Park, Sussex drug ban, removal of children's school grant, adding VAT on essential items, restrictions on used tires, removal of joint services bonus, and the list goes on.
Yeah.
And this is something that they put out. They have acknowledged that they have failed on all of these things. And it's almost as though it's shameless that they just put it out there. Come tell us about it. I mean, you know that it's causing hardship. This is why you've acknowledged it. So
Right.
what do you need the people to come and tell you? Fix it. That's what the people want.
See, I didn't see that flyer, but for me, is you're in office for 4 years. People hollering, they screaming, they're driving down the dead end. They can't manage anymore. They're telling you we can't manage anymore. They have 7,000 people whose jobs you took from them, who are reliant now on charities to send their children to school, to put a pencil in a pencil case and to put lunch in lunch kits. They can't give that to their children anymore. And you come now when we're about to have an election, when the majority of the people in this country said they don't want you anymore, they caused your government to collapse, and you expect us to believe that you love us, that you are going to look after us. And I don't mean me, I don't need your love, and I don't need you to look after me, but the people of this country need you to do what you were elected to do. Not now because you have an election coming up. You're struggling to spend this money. Do you know, Suzanne, this government passed what they dubbed the biggest budget every single year. Oh, this is the biggest budget we have. It's supposed to be. Times are moving, we're evolving. Every single year they sent money back. So while soldiers can't get their bonus, and so they can't give their families, these are people who look after us, who protect us, people in the army, people in the police, who spend a lot of time trying to, and really make sacrifices, work nights, work holidays and so on, trying to look after us. You can't give them their bonus, but you're sending money back. You can't give children their $10,000 grant, but you're sending money back.
You can't give teachers a
You
raise.
can't give teachers a raise. You made these teachers go on the road in the hot sun and beg you and march against you and beat pots on you before they could get a small raise. And the arrogance and the aloofness with which they were treated. Oh, I'm not going to see you, this is Granger. Go down to somebody else. This somebody else is a minister who shouldn't have been there in the first place, not qualified to be minister. Send them to somebody else. And pushing these people around. These are the people responsible for what this country will look like in a few years, in 10, 20 years. Incapable of spending money. They are now saying they're going back to Parliament to get supplementaries. I am really very anxious to see what you want supplementaries for, because the last 4 years you couldn't spend out what you had. So it's going to be interesting to see what you're getting supplementaries for now. And I know a couple of people doing different studies, and there are some studies that suggest strongly that the kind of infrastructure work you promise in these budgets simply cannot be done by the incompetence that exists in the hierarchy of the ministries. By that I mean the ministers, not public servants.
So they're not functioning in their offices, so they decided to go on the street, bringing government to you.
Right.
I actually needed something from the valuation office on that day, and I picked up the phone and I called to ask my question, and I was told that there's nobody there to take my call because everybody's at Square of the Refuge.
Everybody's on this farce. You know, people were so, if they know how public servants felt about that day, people were so ticked off. You know, what you carrying us out in this hot sun, tarmac, big confusion out there, no proper facilities for the people. The public servants didn't like it at all. Not they didn't like serving people, they didn't like being involved as in part of this.
As a political,
It was a political
activity,
event.
yeah.
It was totally a political event to make the ministers look like they're working. That's not work. If you're talking about good governance, which is what your program is about tonight, good governance is about checking with people every time you want to do something new. And that's the Janet Jagan letter. Janet Jagan, throughout her life, and we're celebrating in this week her birth anniversary, throughout her life she had spent time trying to and talking to people across the country, knowing that, oh, they need these laws changed, or they need these programs put in place, or they need these things done. And so that's what I was asking her for. She had done some work on sex offenses back in the 80s. That's how the PPP has been consistent in trying to make people's lives better. Some things take a while, but to get it done, you talk to people, and then when you're done with it, you try to get feedback. So we've passed laws that's now working for you. These government ministers don't go out to do any of that. They don't talk to. Have you seen them in your? I'm not talking about from November to now, because you may have seen them between November to now. Prior to November, did you see any of these ministers in your community, in your village, in your neighborhood, in your anywhere close to you, discussing with you, talking to you what your problems were, seeing how they could solve them, or at least jotting them down and saying, might be able to solve it today, but it's definitely something we're going to do or put on our next discussion paper for a budgeting process next year. None of that happens.
Okay, so we're gonna go to the phone lines. I think we have somebody here. Let's take our first call. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, I want to know about the citizenship. Because prior to now,
Just turn down your TV.
So all the time people was there, and I had your citizenship, but there's nobody ever bring it up.
Right. Okay.
I would want to know that.
All right. So
Thank
you for coming through, and we're going to address that now. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you very much for calling, and for the rest of your life, you will be the first person who called in on the Susan Rodriguez Making a Case show. Yes, you're right. This has been in our Constitution since 2000. The dual citizen means that you're a citizen of Guyana and you're a citizen of another country, or that you have sworn allegiance in different ways to another country. Many of them, the US, England, I heard one that has for Jamaica, but his name is not in the public as yet, and a couple of other places. Mostly have been North America and the UK. It means you're a citizen of Guyana and you're a citizen of that place. Now, from the year 2000 to 2018, all the political parties, although it exists in the law, turned a blind eye to it. Was that right? Perhaps not. Not perhaps. It was wrong. Shouldn't have been done, but it was done. Everybody. The PPP had dual citizens. The PNC had dual citizens. The UF had dual citizens. AFC got dual citizens. Everybody had dual citizens, and everybody was fine with it. And everybody had turned their eyes, a blind eye to it, and we were all carrying on serving
Everyone
the people.
was complicit, and it
Everyone
was not
was complicit.
challenged.
It
And
wasn't-
so that's how it became
Right.
an issue now, because it was challenged.
But that's what I want to point out to this good woman. It was not an issue. Up to the 21st of December, it was not an issue. Up to the 22nd of December, it was not an issue. Up to the 23rd of December, it was not an issue. What happened was because the government fell when the majority of the parliament, which means the majority of Guyana, said they didn't want this government in place because they were incompetent, they were not serving people, they were corrupt, they wanted to see the back of this government. When that happened, the government became the duplicitous fox that they are, and they went and said, but hold on, although dual citizen, this is our dual citizen, you know, we knew he was a dual citizen, we put him there. We are now challenging him, what his vote, based on the ground that he's a dual citizen. Now, when they did that to Charandas' vote and opened that question, it exposed all the dual citizens in the National Assembly to the question of whether they can serve. And both courts in Guyana, the High Court as well as the Appeals Court, said no, dual citizens ought not to be serving in the National Assembly. So we have had a definitive ruling on that. So you're right, it wasn't a problem under the PPP, but when it wasn't a problem under the PPP, the PNC also had people there who were dual citizens. But this party is known, and I just want to make this very, very clear, they're known for being dishonest, for being duplicitous. Duplicitous means two-faced. Two-faced. These are the same people who in 1996 sat down with the PPP and said, you know what, we'll use ID cards as a means of people, that's how, if you got to show your ID card before you could vote. And then when they lost the 97 elections, they went to the court, got a citizen, paid a set of big lawyers, went to the court and said, no, ID cards are unconstitutional. So in fact, the court found that you don't need ID cards, you just need to be a citizen, you need to be registered, a couple other things. But they had agreed to that, and that's what I'm saying. They make agreements and pacts with you, and then when they don't get what they want, which is government, they just and power, then they breach those agreements. And it's okay to want power. See, I don't have a problem with people wanting power, but you must want it for good. You must want it so that you could make the people's lives better. You must want it so that you could make this country better. You can't want it so that your pockets will get heavier. You can't want it so that your light bill doesn't get paid. You can't want it so that you could get fancy duty-free vehicles. It has to be because you want to make people's lives better. If that's what you're using power for, by all means, grab it. If that's not what you're going to use it for, though, the people of this country will take it back from you, as you will see shortly.
Right. And I think the caller's question was valid, because
Yes,
everybody wants
yes.
to know
Why
how come
wasn't
it's
it an issue
now when this
before?
was all right.
Right.
So okay,
I like the question, actually.
we have somebody else on the line. Caller, good evening. You're on the air.
Hi, good evening. I'm enjoying your program.
Oh,
Well,
thank you.
Thank you very much.
As a young person, I would like the minister to address what this government bringing to the table for young people, because this government lied to the young people. So I want to...
Yeah, well, you know,
What the PPP government will bring?
Yeah.
Oh.
And another thing,
Uh-huh.
what a lot of school dropouts. Because you walk around the village and there's kids there. People from Georgetown will not see this because you have to go into our beach. You have to go out to these here and school dropouts in this country.
right.
And what is the issue in that area? What is the issue that you are aware of?
Well, most of them is dependent on the sugar industry, and it's like they don't have jobs and they have the jobs in school, and this government is not seeing that. They're not creating jobs for the people, and
Right. Okay.
so
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Right. So let me just say thank you very much to the caller for both questions, both very valid. The first thing the PPP will do, and you don't have to wonder whether this is real, you have seen it before. It is going to involve in a very tangible way young people. Now if you have 70, the average age in the cabinet I believe is 70 or something. If you have 70-year-olds alone running the country for this, you won't see youth-friendly policies because they have no clue. What was friendly to them 50 years ago is no longer friendly to you. You won't see policies developed for young people. And that's why, look, back in the 1920s, 50s, and so on, they said you got to involve women. Because when you involve women, then women-friendly policies, and that's how the whole women's rights movement started, and feminists started saying we need our place at the table, and people who were friendly said that's true, and the results are in. Once you put more women in leadership, you see more policies that are friendly to women. The same thing with young people. Same thing with other minorities like Amerindians. You have to give them a seat at the table, and not a peripheral seat. What do we have in the National Assembly? We're not talking about, let's talk about the National Assembly first. All the young people that were in there, James Bond, Christopher Jones, all the young people were thrown out. Totally thrown out, not even given a seat in the Assembly. Not even given a seat in the Assembly. In the cabinet, you have a bunch of old men running this country. You have one or two women who are also quite aged. And you see that coming out in the policies they make. So the first thing we will do, and you can tell, look, when I went into the cabinet, I was 30 years old, just turned 30. I turned 30 in August and I was sworn in September. And in that cabinet, you had about 6 of us who were under 35. That's how invested we are in young people. We don't only say we believe you are capable. We put you in a position where your capacity could be unleashed on this nation. And any young person watching us, I want you to know you have a place in this country. We can't all be ministers, we can't all be whatever, but your voice will be heard. So we will definitely be involving young people in far more constructive way than is happening now. And then we have this flyer that we have. Yeah.
So the economy has to be doing well,
Right.
for people to have access to education and access to quality education. So it's not just what you do in one sector, but as a whole, the government has to function in a way that everyone benefits, that persons can afford to send their children to school, give them access not only to primary, secondary education, but tertiary education. And I know for sure that the PPP government has also promised to include offering online university.
So that's what I was just going to
education
tell
program.
you. There's going to be the chance for people not only to go to the University of Guyana, where they're going to be far more improved and better facilities and so on, but also online education for people who want to continue working or continue with their entrepreneurship, if they started up a small business or whatever, and study. And particularly for our friends in the hinterland, our brothers and sisters there who don't want to necessarily leave their communities, want to stay there, build it, but still get educational opportunities. So there's going to be that. The shutting down of, the state has no business telling you what time you must party and where you must go, what time you must go home, and what time you must be with your girlfriend. How stupidness is that? So the 2 o'clock curfew out the window within the first couple of hours of getting into office. We've said that before. It is the whole place is constricted. Mashramani happened and you didn't have that big booming kind of party atmosphere where people's quality of life, you're happier when you can be entertained by artists you like, or by music you like, or by different forms of culture and so on that people like. So that's going to be one. The children that you said dropped out, we had this incredible, look, that's something this country and many countries have struggled with, but there was a really nice report about us in 2014 that said we had cut significantly the number of children dropping out of school. You know, that has changed, as he said. People don't drop out because they want to drop out. They drop out because you literally can't. You have 4 children. You got to pick which one you send into school. You can't send all 4 to school. So 3 kicking brick on the road and 1 going to school. 1 will marry early. Somebody's going to get one of those 4 children. One of the girls going to get a child at 18 or 16 or 17, which all the health reports have said is not good for us young girls, for our young girls. And you're going to have a whole set of spin-off effects from people losing jobs, people not getting jobs. That will impact most on the most vulnerable, older people and younger people. So whenever you have crises in any country, it's the most vulnerable groups in the country that suffer most. And I think young people have been feeling the brunt of this government's neglect. There's nothing to show for the people of this country. There's 1 or 2 grounds here or there. While good is not something to celebrate, it's something that should be a norm.
The PPP has also pledged to extend and improve government services and ICT on the coast and in the hinterland, so that we can prepare young people not only for skills where they use their hands, but to keep up with the 21st century.
Right.
And technology and information communication is the training that our young people need now to be able to function, and to be able to function in any job
Right.
in the future.
You remember we had the 1 laptop per family program. The whole purpose for that program was eventually to connect people. We have also pledged to make connectivity much easier and much swifter. And that's something that's going to benefit young people too, the access to information. That
And
they
we
have
also need to
online.
remove that VAT on data.
VAT remove. Oh, we said very
Yeah.
clearly the removal of VAT on data. Look, we have 200 new items that are attracting VAT now. Many of those items are, it's almost like they're trying to punish you for having a decent life. It's on data. It's on electricity. It's on your water. These are quality of life issues. If you can't shower when you feel like, it affects your quality of life. If you have to be careful how you watch TV or how you use a bulb, it affects your quality of life. If a student at UG has to go back to lighting a lamp so that they could study because they're terrified now that the light bill is going to attract a 14% VAT. So all the 200 VAT measures that were put in place, most of them will be reversed.
Okay, so we have another caller. Caller, good evening, you're on the air. Hello? I think we lost that call. Hello? Yes, I think we lost.
For the young people in the military, where you're definitely going to be getting your bonus, that's going to be restored. In the police force as well as in the army. We're going to remove the restriction on used tires. You know how expensive that has caused tires to become for young people who want to own cars. Yes, go on.
Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, good night.
Hello.
Hello.
I just want to ask Mr. President one question, right?
Sure.
And then you have two answers to me too, right?
Okay.
With disability system, right? I'm 60% disability, right?
Okay.
And I used to get it before, and now they cut it off from me. What is the reason, like? Do you have any idea?
No, I can't tell you why they cut it off. We didn't cut it off. You used to get it before.
Yeah, no, it cut off since it
Okay, but that's what I was going. So the disability is called public assistance, and it's supposed to last for 6 months. The government, well, there's a board in your community that decides whether you need it or not. I believe, and so I can't answer directly to you, and I'm sorry about that because I wish I knew your circumstances and I could actually address those that, specifically. But this is what I could say to you. I could say to you that we are seriously considering the position where people who are disabled and who have been so deemed by a doctor to be disabled to the point where your disability, of course this has to be a medical report, your disability is not going to be reversed. We're not going to be asking for that 6-monthly update. You're going to be supported by the government in different ways to help make your life better. And so that is definitely something that's on the table that we're looking at. We're presently in the process of crafting our
We're
manifesto.
drafting our manifesto. I
Right, so
think
that
we
is
should definitely
something.
make a note of that. And,
Well, it has come up, but I'm glad this gentleman brought it up again. So thank you for that contribution, because it is something that needs to be looked at. I mean, listen, if your 2 legs got amputated, they're not going to grow back 6 months from now. So you don't need a medical certificate again to say that your legs are amputated, and that's just a commonsensical approach to the thing for me. So we're sorry you got removed from the system, but thank you for your contribution,
Thank you
because
for
I believe it
highlighting
will
that.
help us going forward.
Caller, good evening. You're on the air.
Hi, good evening. How are you? How are you guys tonight?
We're very well, thank you. How are you?
All right. I just called the conformity that these taxes, right, from 5% to 25%. Right? What is that? Well, I still alone in this country. Right?
Which tax is that?
Government take over with stress or frustration, right? From 5% to 25%.
Yeah, so those are,
Let me just get it clear. Like you're buying a license for $5,000, right?
right,
Okay, okay, right,
Then
right.
it jumped to $25,000. What
Right.
is that?
Yeah.
Huh?
So all of the fees.
The cost of license and permits for doing business
Yeah.
and accessing government services, we're going to reverse all of that.
All
We're
of
saying
that.
it very clearly. Listen, we're not sitting here and telling you these things because we want you to listen to us and because you caught us in a bind. We have put this out in a flyer that is going around this country, where this is what we are committing to, even without finishing our manifesto. We're committing to these things. We're saying, the caller before spoke about
Okay,
young.
thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Good, thank you for coming through. He asked about young people. A lot of the young people I know don't treat vehicles anymore, cars as a luxury. It's a necessity now. People want to own their own cars. They see it as an asset. We're going to be reversing or removing the age limit on vehicles, because now it's costing people $1 million more, at least, on a car, because of these age limits that they have placed on these vehicles. We're going to be distributing between 8 to 10,000 house lots a year. Now, let me, and that might involve the housing, a better housing program also. Now, let me say this. The 120,000 house lots that were distributed under the PPPC have caused all families to now own a home that they could. So before, when you used to, mother and father, and you downstairs they got son-in-law and daughter-in-law, and in the back part of downstairs they got the daughter and her husband, and everybody living in the same place. You don't have to do that anymore. What we introduced, this government has changed it all, but what the PPP introduced was this housing program where we said we were trying to give every family their own house lot. And then we worked with banks to make sure interest rates were low, and building materials. Now we have VAT on building materials. That's going to be removed and reversed. If a young person, a young couple could go and build their own home, in 20 years' time, you have this home, you could now mortgage it and send your children to fancy universities. You can now mortgage it. You can leave it in a will to your children. You don't have to be someone renting alone. Not that renting is a bad thing, but these are things young people want too. This belief that young people just want very superficial benefits. I don't hold that view. I'm a young person. I'd like to know that I have a stable home, a vehicle I can drive. It's the same thing we want for ourselves that we know you want for your families, and you want as young people, and we promise to be able to deliver some of those. So there's much to get from the PPPC as a government.
I wish I
if
had
you're a
asked the
young person.
caller where he was calling from, because
Then
for
you
the
build
past
this
few
bridge
months,
there.
we've been going around the country in teams, distributing flyers. So this is the flyer that Priya is referring to. On the back of it, there are 14 things which we promise to either reverse
or remove.
or restore. So as in restoring the
Yes.
10,000 cash grant, for example, and reversing cost of license and permits for doing business and accessing government services, which is what the last caller was talking about. So we have 14 pledges, so stuff to remove and stuff to restore. And then under that we have 15 pledges which we will implement once taking back office. So I would have liked that caller to receive the flyer, but our work on the ground continues because there will be an election.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
And that's
we still
why it's
have the
important
campaign.
if you're listening to help us share this message too, because whether the election is next month or later in the year or next year, there's going to be an election, and that will be your chance. The government is playing the fool with you right now, and the government is playing charades with you. We're in today, we out tomorrow, we resign today, we didn't resign tomorrow. I won't be surprised if all those ministers that resign today turn up at work tomorrow, and if you see them, you should take a picture and send it out, because it's just a game. It's a game for them. You will get a chance, whether it's next month or later this year or in 2020, you'll get a chance for your say to make a difference. You will get a chance to pick a government that you think could best deliver to you. And the good thing, I mean, I don't know, a lot of people mightn't like me saying it, but one of the good things that came out of us losing, well, for the purposes of this discussion, we won't talk about whether the elections were rigged. We do have a petition in the court that hasn't been heard as yet 4 years on, but for us coming out of government, one of the good things is you now have the PPP and what their service looks like, and you have the PNC's 28 years and what their service looks like, and then this 4 years now of the PNC, who has renamed themselves APNU, and the AFC, and what that looks like. And you have seen that the same people who said we were corrupt are now renting houses for drugs bonds, where no drugs are being stored. That has cost us more than $400 million already. These same people are giving sole sourced contracts in the sum of $600 and so on million. Stadium that they can't account for over $1 billion. This is the same people who said we can't pay sugar workers. I see an article in the papers, I believe it was today or yesterday, I'm getting mixed up with my days, that said this scrap metal at Gaisuco, which was worth, I think, $3 billion, nobody seems to be able to account for that, where it is. It's not there. Was it sold? They didn't get the money. Did the special unit serve it? People are asking questions. So you have a chance to compare the PPP's service to you and the PNC's APNU AFC service to you. And it's your duty to look after yourself. We will do all we can, but we have to hold each other's hands to take this country to a better place. And we require your help and your vote to do that.
And Priya, I'm going to have to take those comments as your final comments this evening, because we're out of time. I just want to leave something with our viewers tonight, and in reference to what you were saying, that people have a chance to choose. When the elections are held, you have a chance to choose. You will compare your record, our record, as against the record of the present administration, and you must remember that the power of the people is greater than the people in power. And so I want to leave that with you tonight, and I thank you very, very much for watching. I hope we have entertained you as well as informed you, and so thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you, Priya, for being here with me and my first show. You made me feel comfortable, and thank you, viewers. Have a good night, and I will see you next week, Tuesday, same time, same place.
Good night.
Good night.